Okay, thanks for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. In this video, I did basically the same techniques that I've been doing in previous videos, but I wanted to really focus in on the idea of dramatic lighting through the use of shadows. I have taken and sprayed these scenes, and I've also have that segment in a separate video, but kind of got a little bit more of a glossy sheen on these cards. But going back to the idea of shading, in the video you'll see me where I talk about going into this area of the mountain here to kind of make it a little bit more dimensional and bringing shadows into the areas around the rocks down here to give it more depth and to give the scene a little bit more, or those objects a little bit more opacity, I guess, in terms of not just seeing the same lighting coming right through the rocks. Okay, so it's giving them a little bit more dimension that way. On this scene right here, this ledge scene. When I stamp out the scene, I didn't have those birds in it, but it was kind of boring up there, so I stamped that migration in there. But in this one right here, I go into some areas of the rocks down here and give them a little bit more shading, okay? So it's just kind of making the form seem a little bit more round, and by doing so, it really kind of pulls out the lighter areas that still remain. By just simply not going over them with the darker inks. Okay, so a lot of times what people do is they just ink up this entire area here with just one kind of value, maybe a mid-tone to darker tone or something like that. But I just think that leaving some areas a little bit lighter kind of increases the drama of a scene by the use of lighting through the use of shadow. Okay, and this one right here, this is the first scene that I'm going to stamp out in this video in here, but these are actual objects, of course, and they are casting shadows onto the meadow. So shadows back here in the right around the trees, right at the base of these trees coming out this way, and kind of this shadow in this one kind of coming this way, and right down here. Okay, and the area of light in the scene is kind of this area right here. So anyways, kind of anchoring down your solid weighty objects in here, kind of giving them more mass and, like I said, opacity by inking up certain sides of them, making them darker, making the meadow seem darker in certain areas. And it's not really a science, you know, in terms of lighting direction, especially on something like these rocks. I mean, who knows why these rocks are illuminated in this area. You could have had this area of light here, here, or in multiple areas if you wanted to. Same thing with this mountain pink right here. I mean, I could have had this side a little bit more light and, you know, this area darker, you know, so it's kind of just whatever you want to do. But just the very fact of having that value range in whole areas, but also in specific areas within an object. In the video, I'll mention that, you know, by darkening this peak right back here, it kind of separates the front, so it gives it a little bit more dimension and depth with the use of the same image. Let's see, here it is right here. Okay. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the making of these cards. Matted them off to give them a little bit more drama, a little bit of a white, kind of a light border in there to kind of pull out the highlights in there too. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in, and again, thanks for watching. Okay, let's finish these scenes off. I stamped these in an earlier lesson that was focused on lighting and dramatic shadows. And I didn't go beyond that because I didn't want to make that video too long. I did go into 3 different scenes, but they look incomplete to me. Now, I stamped these out about 2 nights ago, and they have dried to a dull sheen, okay? these tree trunks right here are they're really stamped in a dark brown, and they've kind of dried dull. Now that happens a lot of times, but the great equalizer to all ink and glossy cardstock combinations practically all the time is to put a clear spray sealant over the top of that. And I think this is the lesson to demonstrate that in after I get done with the highlights and some additional touches with some pigment ink. I'm going to take these cards outside tomorrow because it's midnight right now, and I'll spray these, and we'll see if we can bring back some of the depth and the richness of the layered inks. Okay, and that tends to do it. Just about every time. Sometimes I do it before these dry too, and therefore it never gets, to this kind of dull finish on it. But anyways, that spray really helps, and we'll talk about some the different brands out there that you can use. Some people actually used hairspray, but anyways, we'll get to that later. Starting off with this scene right here. See down here, there's kind of a rich, value lighting scheme going from darks to lights, oscillating between dark and light. Okay, dark, light, dark, light, dark. But and there is some texture in here, but we can really increase the textural range of that by going in and adding some crisp little highlights into the scene. Now, I could do things just with the white pen, but there's so many different colored gel pens out there that we can take advantage of. In this scene right here, I think I'm going to do some wildflowers, like maybe some seasonal poppies or something like that. Little pops of color. Let's see. And when I apply these little highlights like this, I tend to like grouping them in some ways. Okay? When people start putting in these highlights, and I think I was the same way, for some reason, and most of us, I find, because I've taught workshops and I've seen people doing this, and they say that something looks kind of weird. And what happens is, when they start applying these, they start doing these little dots, okay? And they start doing them, I don't know, it's usually like a 1/4 inch, or, well, maybe not a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch apart from each other, like perfectly spaced. I don't know what it is. It's like almost like something in our brain, wants to kind of do a real even pattern of those types of dots. But I think it looks better clustered when you're doing it. Here's another lesson right here that I did earlier, but even in the stars, I don't know, I kind of space these out evenly, but see, kind of when you cluster some like that, I just think it looks a little bit more natural, I guess, to kind of do something like that, rather than just, perfect spacing all across the, the entire sky or something like, that sort. Let's see, that was, that orange might represent some California poppy. This white, I believe there's this little white flower called Pearly Everlasting or something of that sort. I've seen these types of flowers growing in meadows at times during the spring. I don't know if I'll see that this year, because there's, out here in California, we've had hardly any rainfall, but we'll see. I guess there's time left, but not much. Anyways, Pearly Everlasting and some purple. Is it lupin or lupine? I think it's a nice kind of a combination of colors, that orange and purple and that white creates a kind of a beautiful tapestry of color, especially when you see it out in nature. It's such a treat. Okay, something nice and spring-like. And I'm sure for a lot of you, spring just can't come soon enough. It's been some record cold temperatures in some parts of the United States and probably the world. We've had unseasonably warm weather, but and some really bad drought too at the same time. Okay, laying down some fog, I think, around these trees to create a little bit of depth and texture. I like putting it at the base of the tree or between trees, like, you know, kind of some light is kind of pouring through there. And it gives me a little bit of extra dimension in terms of lighting and kind of a atmospheric mist, adding some down at the base of this tree. Now I'm going to spray these scenes, and this pigment ink, this is a color box pigment ink, Frost White. The Frost White and color box, now there's a lot of other pigment inks out there that probably work, but I know this one really, really well. And what I like about it in terms of this application is that it doesn't dry so fast, so it gives me plenty of time to move it around on the paper, just like the thicker inks, you know, in the dye-based forms. It tends to give me a little bit more time to spread them around. I want that same type of ability when I'm using this pigment ink for this particular application. Now, if you stamp out an image with this color box pigment ink on glossy cardstock, if any of you have ever done that, you know that it just doesn't dry really very quickly at all. A lot of times you have to heat set it, or you're just doing it for the sake of embossing. Okay, there comes some fog in there, but what this does do, I'm applying it in a very thin layer. Okay, I can add more. I'm not adding it quickly, I'm just kind of slowly building it up, okay? And that's the trick of it. Don't put big blobs of ink. If it's kind of hard to manage and, you know, control, dab off some ink first, okay? And so each tap, you know, will be applying much less ink to the scene, and thus it becomes easier to control and manage. Okay, but what I was getting at now is this ink tends to dry in a kind of a chalky, finish. And if any of you have ever sprayed anything, spray sealed any chalks or things like pastels, you know, you have to be careful, because what happens is everything you've laid down with those chalks or pastels, it tends to almost just disappear. It goes from translucent or opaque to transparent. So you have to be careful about that, and I believe, you know, I probably will lose some of this effect right here, but, you know, I can probably go back in and add some more right over the top of that sprayed surface. It looks a little bit different, but I should be able to benefit from it a little bit. Alright, so here's a little bit of atmospheric fog in there. Let me see. Let's go back to that gel pen. I'm looking on here, and I have those little highlights down, you know, here, but I'm thinking about when I spray this, I want some little highlights on some of these different elements within the scene. Okay, I think these little highlights on those reeds down there will kind of pull it out from the background. I mean, it does right now, but you know, this is going to get darker, so the contrast between that and the tree is probably going to decrease as the trees get darker. These reeds, these foreground reeds, aren't going to stand out as much. Okay. Okay. Doing the same thing here. You notice I have this card turned upside down. I just find it easier just to work this way. My hands are real comfortable as opposed to doing this and coming over here. When I'm working like this, I'm seeing it kind of like you are. I can't see, you know, underneath my hands, so I just turn it this way and I can see those reeds perfectly well. Okay. Okay, maybe we can even put some on the tree trunk. It pulls it out from the background a little bit. There's not a huge amount of contrast between the tree and the sky, but just a little bit of, you know, white right there, a thin line. And the light is coming from here. Let's do it on this side of the tree just to kind of pull it out from the background a little bit. Okay. Just kind of reiterates the lighting direction within the scene. Put some down on those background trees too if I want to. And why not? Placing some highlights on the side of the trees that are facing my light source, which happens to be this little area right there. Okay. Done with that one. Except for the spraying and mounting. Okay, let's get to this one right here. What to do on this one? I still think it needs something in here. Some birds or something like that. I don't know, I'll figure that out later. Maybe. I don't know, nothing really comes to mind right now. I should take a look at my non-Stampscapes images. I use different images with my in my personal stamping all the time. Sometimes people, it seems like when they talk to me, that they don't want to say, oh, they used a stamp from another company. Hey, I do it all the time. I tend to be on to those companies that have a lot of old engravings with, you know, tight details. A lot of it's kind of copyright-free style of image illustrations. But I love those engravings by the I don't know, old masters of, you know, engravings. I love tight detail and you know, super fine renderings of shade. And of course there's all kinds of different images to choose from for those companies that do have those. I'm putting some highlights on the tops of some of these rocks right here. You can see it's kind of bringing some of them to life. Otherwise it's kind of, you know, this area out here, I mean, it's okay, but, you know, it's a touch on the boring side, right? You know, in all seriousness, but you put a few of these little highlights like that, more in the lighter areas, okay? And less out in the shade, because you're not going to have reflected light in the shadows as much. Some more in here. And less out here. Okay, now this is a perfect opportunity for some additional texture and kind of that area down. I mean, this image was called Boulders with Lichen. I stamped it several times. But that lichen, maybe, you know, you can put some different texture down there. I don't like the green so much. Let's try this, this peach, pale orange color. Looks better. But going back to that, what I was talking about, I use other companies' stamps all the time. The original concept for my first line of scenic stamps, when I worked for a Stamp in the Hand, was I figured the nature line was just there were going to be background stamps for, you know, mainly stamps from other companies. You know, there were so many different companies, and I don't know. I thought one thing that was kind of missing, you know, was the settings for them. You know, not all of them, but a lot of the different animal stamps out there, and you know, some people had kind of the isolated tree here and there, but they didn't have the things that would kind of bring it all together, or to make it a, you know, its own system in itself. But that's still kind of the concept of it all. You know, you can use stamps from, you can use sibling designs, okay, within the line itself, and if it's a good design, it should be able to be used with stamps from other companies in terms of nature stamps, and they should be able to be used with kind of other unrelated stamps. A lot of people just, you know, do sentiments or something like that. A lot of people like these. Anyways, that's the, I think that's all I'll do on this one. There's a lot of different textures in here. See that on those rugs? All those different colored dots. That peach, and a little bit of red here and there. That one didn't work out so much, but it's kind of in the darkness, so it doesn't really matter. But anyways, a lot of people use sentiments with these scenes. They like that it's kind of gender neutral. Everyone kind of likes nature, or even people don't like being out in it and hiking it or whatever. Most people like looking at it. It's kind of has a calming feel, and you know, they make great birthday cards for I don't know, both genders. So you can just do backgrounds, in other words, for, you know, word stamps and whatnot. Even kind of sympathy cards, you know, if you do something kind of calming. Okay, I'm adding some highlights on these peaks right here, where I've added a lot of the shadows. I can add highlights on the other side of it. Okay. Just to really kind of pull it out from the background, or to make it look even more dimensional. And sometimes when you're working with, you know, things like sponges, you know, you can get into some, you know, semi-detailed areas with those, but, you know, that sponge really isn't a detailed type of tool, where, you know, this little ballpoint pen, you know, certainly can be very detailed. So this is a way to go back in and add that kind of element of crisp detail back into smaller areas. Okay, see those little dots right there coming off that peak? More dots, if not a line, in the lighter areas right next to the cloud. And it just kind of peters out there as it goes into the darkness, okay? Same thing right there. A few little highlights right in there, kind of bringing that dark side of the mountain to life a little bit with the light shining on it. Highlights right there on that little ridge. Going down like this. And again, kind of, what you do is you condense the dots a little bit more in the lighter areas, okay? And then you kind of space them farther apart as it moves into the darkness, okay? Because you're going to have less highlights, more, and a couple here, and then it moves into the darkness and I don't have any. So what you do is you really kind of space things out a little bit, and I think it looks a little bit more natural that way. I don't have just perfectly spaced highlights, you know, right on the perimeter of the mountain there. It would look like, you know, we strung up Christmas lights or something like that on them. I mean, that has its own look, you know, if you're going for it. It kind of gives it a whimsical feel. But if you're not going for that, you know, that's you know, that's the what happened, you know, if it kind of ends up that way. And this is a gel pen, okay? It's, you know, as far as I know, it's water-based, but when these things dry, okay, if you don't like it, let the gel pen dry on there and just take a paper towel or napkin or something like that, or sometimes you can even take your finger and just rub that dot right off. It's not going to remove the ink. Okay, and within the water down here, we have these little dots of what they call specular light. It's light that's brighter than white, okay, because it's lighting itself. I'm saying it's representational, you know, specular light. Putting some on those reeds, kind of pulling it out from the background. This one should look really beautiful when I spray these cards with that spray sealant. It should make them really super vivid. Okay, a few little highlights on some of these rocks. Okay, there's your highlights down there. These little dots really... I don't know if I don't remember if I've stamped out a scene and not added these highlights. They become such an integral part of the technique. What can I say? I don't think I can live without them sometimes. Sometimes I don't have them though, because, you know, if I don't retain some of the white of the card here and there, even if it's a small little area, like this one right here, there's those two little areas in there. I use this pen for stars, but on the rocks right here, I wouldn't really be putting in reflections or highlights with white if white doesn't exist as a light source within the scene. Okay. And maybe I should do something like that. I should do like try something with like a real foggy day, I guess, or something like that. Okay, let's go back to the pigment ink. Super wet pad. It's fairly new. My pigment inks tend to last a very long time because I rarely stamp anything out with them. You know, I should do some embossing or something like that. Stamp some of these images out on gold and on dark papers. I haven't done that for a while. I don't know why. I like the look a lot. I don't know. That's another lesson, I guess, somewhere. Another video. I'll try to get to something like that too before too long. detailed embossing powder or metallic embossing powders with these images and on black paper or dark papers. It's kind of cool looking. Those ones make some fun greeting cards as well when they're used with different sentiments or word stamps. Okay, just like looking up Mount Everest. Sometimes you see wisps of snow flurry coming off of it or something like that at elevation. This isn't supposed to be Mount Everest, but just saying. Okay. Why not put some of this down in the leg? Again, I'm probably going to miss some of this, or lose some of it when I spray that. But, I don't care. We'll see how it comes out. Sometimes you just gotta let the scene go where it seems to want to go. Okay. I feel a little... Oops. See that how I've applied some ink over the top of it. It's not a big blob of ink. Kind of in between some of these trees, we have this oscillation of light and dark within there. I don't know, it's not super light, but it's lighter on those trees. It makes them seem a little bit more dimensional, saying that they're kind of inset within some illuminated moisture within the air by doing that. Come on, focus in. Okay, so you can see some little highlights here and there within the clouds. Just a few little dots like that. Not everywhere, but just here and there. You know, when you're doing these types of little effects, you know, we tend to, you know, we're focusing on kind of areas, large areas when we're applying inks and kind of on the overall of a scene. But when you get into the tight little details, what we tend to start focusing is on, you know, like a 1 square inch area of a card or something like that. So it's a good idea to kind of, as you're doing these finishing touches, is to kind of, you know, hold it out at a distance and get a good idea of the overall as you're applying these details in very small areas. Okay, these are the 3 cards again, and the next step that I'll do tomorrow sometime is I'll spray these off, and I'll take the camera outside and I'll see if I can, you know, get that on video and try to get some of that change in intensity caught on, you know, within the camera itself. It's probably going to be really glary unless it's foggy tomorrow. But we'll see how it turns out, and I think afterwards I'll mount these and make them into cards. Right now they're just kind of postcards, of course. A lot of times people say, well, what do you do with it, these scenes? Well, sometimes people just stamp scenes for the sake of stamping scenes, but most people they use rubber stamps or card makers, and you know, these ones can really, you know, they improve with some matting and some other papers on it, and that might kind of add a nice touch to all of these. Can't wait to do something on this with the green. Okay, so next step, we'll get into some of those acrylic sprays, and there's several different ones that I'll show you. Okay. Okay, we're outside right now, and I'm going to spray seal these different scenes out there, including a piece of stamp board tile with a selection of different clear coats. I have a Krylon Crystal Clear. Can be found just about anywhere in any hardware store. Acrylic coating. We have a Minwax Polyurethane. Krylon UV resistant clear. kind of made for more of a art type of application than the crystal clear. This is, I don't know, it can be used on whatever, but it's kind of something that you would use like maybe on furniture or something like that. And a premium decor clear, PDS7 gloss. And we'll try them all out. They should look basically the same. Polyurethane's a little bit different. I'm going to use that on the tile. But anyways, what I was getting at in the video is that some of these scenes have dried to somewhat of a dull sheen. These trees should look a little bit darker. And same thing with all these other scenes right here. They've kind of dried dull, which happens. And one thing that was kind of curious was this scene right here that I used a Luma dye in. It is perfectly saturated and super dark, and it almost looks like I've sprayed it. You know, you can see the blacks in there, very black, as opposed to, say, the black right here, you know, which is quite a bit different. You can see the different saturations there, or intensity of black. This one dried to kind of like a 90%, and this one still looks 100%. But anyways, all of these can benefit from a spray seal. It tends to bring back the depth of a scene. Okay, let's start off with the tree trunk one, okay? And I hope this is focusing. Let me see if I can get it. I don't know how much you're going to be able to see on camera as far as an instant transformation, but let me try with the Krylon Crystal Clear. Okay, I always do this outside because it gets real fumy. Okay, let's see here. What I do is I go about, probably about 9 inches away or so, 9 to 12 inches. You want to spray it at about that distance. You don't want to spray too close, otherwise you'll get a puddle of that acrylic spray down there. Try not to breathe too much of this type of thing in. It's not good for you. But anyways, let's go in here. Let's see. Kind of before. Okay. Take a look at the value of these in terms of light and dark, and the saturation of colors. Here, this is a good idea. Let's do half and half, okay? Okay, you see that tree? I sprayed this side, but you can see the difference between here and here pretty well. I hope the camera is capturing that. Okay. So this is kind of, spray sealing is kind of the great equalizer for pad and paper combinations, or ink and paper combinations. Sometimes some inks just dry dull on certain types of papers, but you take in these spray seal these things, and it kind of brings back the richness of the inks. I'm getting a little glare here, but I hope you can see the difference there. The Krylon takes a few minutes to dry. It depends on what the weather is, of course. Let's go to this one. Even though this looks deep and rich, I think spray coating would help. I guess I'll use let me just use the Krylon again. I don't know if we can see too much of a difference. Let's look at it from left and right side. See if you can see any difference at all. Okay. I mean, I can see it, here live. The blues look a little bit deeper. Okay. Gives a nice shiny coat too. Like I said, it takes a little bit to dry, but see how shiny that is? It's beautiful over the top of a glossy coating. Glossy cardstock. But anyways, I mean, when they'd make postcards, sometimes, on a printing machine, instead of like a color, what they do is they put a clear coat over the tops of papers too, or postcards. Let's go with the Krylon UV resistant, okay? It says it protects against harmful UV light rays, non-yellowing permanent coating, moisture resistant, and dries in minutes. Okay, kind of more for the artist application. And let's do half and half. Okay. Okay, you can see one side and the other side. Can you see the depth of this side? It's hard to see with that glare there. And here's this side, a little bit more dull. See that rich green in there as well? Okay, maybe you can see on the top better. It's really glossy, and this side is kind of more, I don't know, it almost looks matte in comparison. Okay. I like the edges real dark and crisp. Okay, see that right there? They have a beautiful coating on that. Now let's try this one right here. This one really dried kind of to a dull sheen. If you like that look, then of course don't spray it. Certainly don't have to. Let's go with the UV again. You can see the trees here, that black on that side and the black over here. Same black, right? But it just brought out a somewhat a deeper saturation. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Look how beautiful that is. Okay. Let's switch up here. Okay, this is the ledge. I stamped in those birds this morning. Needed something up in the sky, but let's use the one that the spray that I probably use the most these days is the premium decor. Let's see, Discovery by Ken Pesho, and his advice is always valued, and he's always right about these things in terms of media and whatnot. This is found at Ace Hardware, and the thing that I like about it is you get all the benefits of the other sprays, but this one just seems to dry so much faster. I've used it so much I'm almost out of it. So I make a few passes at it, but look at that difference between that side and this side. Okay, it looked the same before I sprayed it, but look at it now. See those rocks down there with a deep black and how shiny it is? You come over here and it's a little bit dull. Okay, so like I said, if the ink applies the same but dries differently, again, the great equalizer are sprays. Just spray seal in it, and it looks better, and you won't have to worry about anything kind of drying dull, unless you want that kind of that softer, you know, look. Okay, I'm almost out of this. That might be the last card that I spray with that can. Okay, but here we go. Very saturated in terms of the depth of layers of ink. Okay. Now, one of my favorite sprays for stamp board, because stamp board is a hardboard tile, is and it has a clay surface on it. This is a scene that I think I did for one of the previous lessons, but it dried very dull, and I just put another coat of blue on there today, so it looks a little bit deeper. But see this, how flat it is? Of course it's a clay surface, it's not a glossy surface. But what I like to do is I like to use the polyurethane spray. It doesn't have to be Minwax. Any kind of polyurethane spray, you find it in the that whole section in the hardware store. Let's see, let's focus in here. Okay, got that. But what I like to do is give these tiles a real thick coating of spray. Okay, and let's see, you see how glossy that is now? And for me, it has the feeling of a glazed tile, like a ceramic tile, because you do have that clay aspect on here and the hard board, so you can put a real thick coating on here, and it takes a long time to dry, so you just leave it sitting for a while, and when it dries, it has this really thick coat of that clear surface or whatnot. So like I said, it feels like a fired tile that you've applied glaze to, or ceramics. So anyways, these are some different sprays here, and something that I would always recommend, for those that want to kind of retain the or kind of resurrect the richness of a freshly stamped scene. This is all glossy paper, but you can do it on matte too, I would guess. And of course, that's what something like the UV resistant is used for. There's other sprays called like spray fixatives, and those ones are more for like chalks or pastels, and it's not meant to give it a glossy coating, but you can try that as well. I mean, back in the day, there were people that were also using things like hairspray. Okay, that's for people that weren't worried about, like a UV or a yellowing effect, or something like that. But anyways, you can try it out. It is a clear spray, and, should meet with a different effect, but if you're not worried about it. As far as the UV resistant clear, I don't know how light fast that's going to make any colors. I think if I left this out in the sun too long, I think this would really, fade out. The UV probably just cuts out some of that UV and helps something that might be under glass, but I wouldn't say that makes these things permanently, saturated for, display purposes. It might help it a little bit, but all these clears and things like that, dye-based inks, typically are very bright colors, and unless you're working with something like a Memento that's supposed to be kind of fade resistant, I don't know how much I would trust that. So the bottom line is, if you ever really like a scene a lot, or something that you've stamped out, and you're kind of, you want it to remain super vibrant, and you also want to put it on display, I'd recommend scanning it and getting a color print of it and putting that on display, and leaving the originals somewhere out of the light. And if you do that, then these should, I have some scenes from 20 years ago that look just as vibrant now because they haven't been exposed to light. So anyways, a variety of different sprays, all very effective. Again, I like the Ken Pesho Premium Decor Clear. I just think it dries the fastest, so, if you're in a hurry, like all these right now, I want to matte and put into a card format, but probably all of them except for the, the PDS 7 gloss, I'd have to wait, because it's going to be tacky to the, the fingertips. So anyways, hope that helps, and answer some questions about the sprays. Thanks for watching.